Hey, Bob.
Hey, Alex.
We got some news to
It's not
share.
Thursday. What are we doing here?
I know. Well, we got some exciting news to share with the world.
Some exciting Atlassian news?
Not directly, but by virtue of
Oh,
association, yes. Transitive property. So,
so-
breaking fresh out of the press, Agile Alliance, created by some of the founders of the Agile Manifesto, has now joined and merged with the PMI Institute, the Project Management Institute.
so this has been blowing up all over my LinkedIn feeds this morning because there are a number of areas that my LinkedIn feed concentrates on. The one of which is the first of which is Atlassian, right? The second of which is on agile development, right? Scrum, Safe, Kanban, XP, all of those kind of practices. And when I saw this, it was really, really kind of a shock. And so it was announced today, but they had signed the actual agreement on December 31st. And so what happens is that they're calling this a partnership. Although, if you, from the standpoint that Agile Alliance is a nonprofit organization, this isn't a typical mergers and acquisitions, an M&A type of thing. So they're calling it a partnership where PMI is partnering with Agile Alliance.
And as I'm going through the website, they've actually started rebranding a few areas where they're now the PMI Agile Alliance.
Yes, they're now calling themselves the PMI Agile Alliance.
Now, so that's the news. Let's
That's
talk
the
about the good, the bad, and the ugly. What does
okay.
this mean? What does this mean to the Alaskan community?
I don't think that there's going to be a lot of effects on this and on the Atlassian community per se. I think a lot of agile practitioners, members of Agile Alliance happen to be using Atlassian tools to implement, and Agile Alliance now being I partnered with PMI to me means that Agile Alliance stays alive in some form or fashion.
To
What
me, I see the opposite though.
what do you see?
So I see, and this is something again I've been foreshadowing since what May 1st, 2024, that Atlassian killed Agile because Agile Alliance and the principles and the philosophy and the framework and just the state of mind is drastically different than that of a traditional PM.
True,
Night and day almost.
it is.
And now you're bringing in that beacon of hope, and Big Brother has absorbed it.
I knew you were going to go there, and I will give you a historical parallel because I don't know if you were alive when this happened. So
What, Betamax and VHS?
no, even worse than that. Apple and Microsoft.
Okay, I'm familiar with their history, but enlighten me.
You are familiar with the history. You are familiar with Apple and Microsoft being, kind of that, oil and water
I
type
mean, they
type.
weren't at one point, but they did became at one point.
Yes, but there were so an important part of the history of both companies is that for a certain period of time, as Apple was on its last legs and they brought Steve Jobs back in
Mm-hmm.
by buying Next Computer, Microsoft owned a significant part of Apple stock at the time.
Nope, not
And they
familiar.
can, and so this I kind of see as that Apple Microsoft moment, almost that same thing. I think Agile Alliance had gotten really uh really injured, or really hurt, or really weakened, because as an organization, their primary product are conferences.
Hmm.
Because Agile Alliance, they don't do certifications, they don't do training for attaining certifications. They mainly do conferences. And in 2020, those conferences took a nosedive with COVID, and they've just now really, almost, possibly, are starting to recover, but maybe not recover in time. And so they really needed a lifeline. And I think
Yeah, I can see that.
PMI
So
is
from a
providing
business
them that
perspective, I
lifeline.
can see that, right? Like it makes sense. But I'm still very pessimistic about this, all right? Because like I can see I don't want to say that the principles and core of the Agile Manifesto will be altered because of this, but I would expect resources that are going to be published going forward to be now more influenced on traditional project management as opposed to Agile purism.
How well, okay, but this isn't PMI's first foray into acquiring agile resources. They had their own certification exam, the ACC, you know, uh, the PMI ACP Agile Certified Practitioner, right? And then a couple years ago, they went and uh, purchased Distributed Agile. So, and they haven't really, you know, completely gutted out Distributed Agile and the Agile exams and the
Mm.
certifications in that. So I don't
Yeah,
think they're going to go over and completely rewrite in crayon the Agile Manifesto. But besides, nobody can do that. Not even, it's not like Agile Alliance owns the manifesto. Nobody does.
well, let's look at it from this perspective then. Does this merger then mean that Safe now could potentially have a new competitor?
I don't think so. No,
You're gonna say no, or you don't think so?
I don't think Safe has PMI is going to be gunning for Safe, or PMI is going to be gunning for the Scrum
But
Alliance.
why not? Because Agile in a nutshell sucks. As a Let me rephrase. Agile is a-
Mar-
Agile is great when you have a team of like 8 to 10 people. The moment you have an enterprise, Agile sucks. It doesn't scale at a purest level.
but Agile, but PMI acquiring or partnering with Agile Alliance wouldn't change that proposition.
I get that, but now you have access to vast more resources. I feel like project management as a I don't know industry is way more mature. Right? I mean, the PMP is like the most coveted exam you can get in that space.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the CISSP in cybersecurity, right? It's like the most
Right.
prestigious certification. So Agile has like let's face it, like the last year and a half has been just harsh on Scrum Masters, right? Like anybody who's a Scrum Master who's not on a open to work right now.
Yes, I think there has been a reckoning in the agile workspace, and all quarters, doesn't matter if you're, uh, you know, all branches of that tree are really, really getting hit with it. It doesn't matter if it's Scrum, it doesn't matter if it's Safe, doesn't matter if it's Kanban. Everybody's getting hit with it because people have been spouting this, and getting getting things done faster, and when you finally look at it, the benefits just that were promised just haven't appeared. Now, is it the fault of an agile mindset? Is it the fault of a bad implementation of Scrum or a bad implementation of Safe? That's
N-
there's so much. I, if you wanted to blame, and we're not blaming, right? If you want to blame, there's just so much blame that's
yeah,
easily available
but,
to
but this is kind of
throw around.
but this is the positive thing of what I'm talking about, though, right? Yeah, yeah. Agile has been hurting, but project management, as an industry, as an idea, has been tried and true for a millennia.
But I
I mean,
think here's
how
here's
do you think
here's
we got
where
pyramids built?
here's
In
where I
mountains?
think you and I have different perspectives on this. You're looking at project management as one or the other, right? It's either the traditional way or it's this agile way that's been up for more than 20 years. I'm actually seeing that these are two different approaches depending upon what you want to deliver. There is room out there for projects that have a definite beginning, a definite middle, and a definite end. And yes, the traditional approaches can work with that. But there are times where to solve the problem of getting something out there, especially if you don't know everything, when it's completely novel development, then yes, you're going to want to look at it as a series of experiments with strong feedback cycles with your customer base.
Yeah,
And
but that
so
can be
there's
said
a way for
for
the traditional, and there's a way for this agile iterative development.
except that everybody put agile to be agility and was expecting faster results.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a blame in a book that one of the founders of Scrum put out there, right? Double the results for half the time.
Better, faster,
Uh,
cheaper.
yeah, that was I have the book, read the book. It's a great book on Scrum, but that title just it really really is kind of accelerating these promises that there's no way that you can keep.
And I think a lot of the where things went sideways on agile, right, is and I mentioned this to Mike from Visor. Everybody kind of hides behind this concept of agile, which is again why I'm excited for this whole merger with the PMI, because I feel like agile is a great idea. It's a great way to approach a problem. You want to do iterative feedback based creations of anything and any industry, right? You don't even need to be software development, like construction, pharmaceutical. Every industry can benefit from having a quote unquote agile mindset.
I don't know about construction.
I do. And my examples on how I teach agile is always based on a construction project.
I there are things where you definitely want to do the measure twice, cut once type of thing, or make sure that when you're pouring the foundation, you want
The entire foundation to
the
be
beams
poured.
exactly where you are, right?
Well, this is again why agile is such a interesting concept, because I look at an application of agile not at pouring the entire foundation, which is key, but I see it more of, should we even have poured the foundation here, right? And so you take an iterative approach at building a piece or building some of it to learn before you wouldn't pour an entire site all in one shot.
You do if you're very sure and there are no unknowns.
Yeah, but that's never a sure thing.
That's not necessarily true. There are always examples where things that have been cut and dried, and it's just a matter of just executing it.
But in today's day and age, we have more unknowns than ever.
That's I don't, you know, I think that's gonna go on the it depends. It depends on the type of work. And I will bring up the producing the Jira Life the Jira Life episode, right? You know, there are things that we know about that we have to do, we have to hit, otherwise it won't be as successful, right? We have to have, you know, certain things in play, right? In season 2, we had to have a guest by this date, make sure that that we had a guest. There are certain deliverables we had to make by a certain time. Otherwise, we couldn't get the word out
No,
to our
I get that.
Jermigos, and right.
I get that,
So
but
that type of work, yeah, it's going to
to
be
get there,
cookie
no,
cutter,
because
right?
you're still missing the point though. Because to get to that point in the Journey Life, Ronnie and I iterated 3, 4, 5 different times to get to there, and you included. And now we've gotten there. We have something stable, and we went and mocked with it, and now we have a whole new set coming out. So we iterated just yet again.
The overall iteration is one thing, but kind of that ground laying, the actual doing part, not much iterative there.
Until we go and change the whole thing already.
Well, it
I'm,
it
I
gets
think
harder to do that, and I would only recommend doing that if there is an item of the unknown. Making a thumbnail, there's not that much unknown there.
no, there isn't, except until you get to figure out how to make the thumbnail. So for me to get to my thumbnail that I have today, I had to go through 50 different versions of my thumbnail.
Right.
That was an agile process.
But the next time that you do it is are you still are you at that point where you're still experimenting?
Yes, I am. Because the algorithm and the capabilities change all the time, right? Like thumbnails today are important, but they don't last very long now. Because the moment you hover over a video, you're instantly playing the video. So now your first 10 seconds of the video are just, if not more important than the thumbnail. Because somebody's going to hover their mouse over the thumbnail, and now they're driven into a feed of the video. And so you have to pivot now. You have to adjust. Even if you have your formula down, now YouTube's introduced new capabilities that have to make you pivot. So you're always evolving. And I want to segue this into a conversation of like, if Agile's so important, right? If all of this stuff is so critical, why don't we ever have documents published from like Meta or Google or Microsoft on the how they implement Agile?
I don't know. You'll have to ask Meta or Google or
My suspicion is that they don't do Agile.
could be.
So if they don't do Agile, then why why the rest of the world should do Agile? I'm sitting here. I have yet to ever, in my entire 14-year career, I have yet to explain one successful use case of we succeeded. We did something better, faster, cheaper because we were Agile. So maybe Agile's not dead, but maybe Agile's a lie.
I think it's not. I don't think it's Agile is dead. I think Agile is evolving, and maybe it's and it has to, right? Because things regarding work change all the time. And even the traditional ways of doing it have evolved, right? If you were asked to create a Jira software project and they weren't going to do Scrum, right? They were actually looking at doing traditional type of development. What project template would you give them?
Scrum one?
You'd probably give them the Kanban one,
Oh,
wouldn't you?
sorry. Yeah, sure. I'm like, I have a 50-50 chance of getting this right. I was just about to Scrum.
Why?
Because
Well, wait a minute.
I'm going
Why
to tell you
default
why.
to Scrum if you think that idea of Agile is dead, or is it just Scrum makes sense because in a traditional development you could extend the time boxes to, okay, maybe we're looking at 3-month sprints,
No,
quarterly
I
sprints.
say Scrum because you can't boil the ocean.
Okay.
And and I still go back that everything is always better in an iterative based approach. Doesn't
Okay.
matter what you're doing because you're always going to discover new variables and you're always going to have new information that you didn't have 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. And when you do a big bang approach, you don't allow for those discoveries to influence the final result.
Okay. Sounds pretty agile to me.
Right. I'm a huge proponent of Agile. I'm just saying,
Even though you're calling it dead.
I'm calling it, it's hard to put an ROI on Agile because in my eyes, being Agile makes you better, not cheaper. I don't think that being Agile makes you do things faster and cheaper. I think it lets you do things better, but I think it's slower.
I think it gives you a better I think it gives the customer a better chance of what they really want,
They don't know
because,
what they want.
well, they will have a better idea as soon as you
Yeah,
give
well,
them that first thing.
right, but you have an idea of what you want, and that might not be what you actually want.
Well, but you can't experience what you want unless you're absolutely positively sure of what you don't.
But how do you know what you don't want? It's like dating. You don't marry the first person you meet.
Well, in this one, this is where that iterative development with that customer feedback comes in. That feedback is so important and so often missed, and probably one of the faults of quote unquote why agile doesn't work is, you keep you keep going at it, but you don't let the customer see your first or your second effort
You
or
iterate
your
in a
third
black
day,
box.
because the idea is that they help drive toward the ideal, toward what they want.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I think just to kind of go back to the beginning of this conversation, I think PMI Institute partnering with this, I I I think it gives Agile a lifeline,
Yep.
and I think we
More agile
might.
conferences.
But I still see Agile becoming more of a traditional project management way of delivering than what I think the founding fathers intended it to be. Like I think they're gonna add more structure, more rigidity, more validity, more enterprisey-ness to it, which then again starts borderlining skill or safe.
Well, so The thing about Agile Alliance is they don't ascribe to one implementation or the other. They don't say that Scrum is the way, or they don't say that Kanban is the way. They don't say that XP is the way. They don't say safe is the way. They really are there to kind of talk about the mindset and talk about, well, here are the available options. Oh, and you want to make sure that when you actually when the software team delivers something, it just doesn't sit on the shelf until operations is ready to look at it. Well, this is where DevOps comes in, right? So they give kind of the window to all of the efforts that go on to foster agility. And so I think keeping them around is kind of a good thing. I don't think that this in any way is shaping PMI to go up against Scrum Alliance or Scaled Agile. That's not going to happen.
I don't
But
know. The
I
thing
think
that it still goes back to the beginning, right? Agile and project management are two polar opposites. It doesn't make sense to me that, like, I don't see why they would become one.
But you're kind of thinking that it's got to be one or the other, and I don't think that's necessarily true.
If you are a competitor and you just bought your competition, what are you going to do with your?
I don't know. I'm going to circle back to that. I'm going to circle back to that Apple Microsoft thing.
Yeah, but look at how that
still
ended.
Around. Microsoft is still around. They're still two separate companies. They're still doing really, really well and making hand over fist.
Yeah, but they divorced.
That's true, but they're still making a lot of money. And it's not necessarily they are competitors in one sense, but also, for the longest time, Microsoft is a software supplier to Apple. And Microsoft does a whole lot of other things that Apple just doesn't do.
I guess we'll have to wait and see what comes of this. I think at the very least, though, I think we'll see better documentation, maybe even a new certification.
Well, I don't think we're going to see a certification come out of this.
You don't think so?
Agile Alliance doesn't do certifications.
Agile Alliance doesn't, but PMI does.
PMI does a ton of certifications.
Right. So
sure. Do you think that this is going to improve the PMI ACP?
I think
they're kind of their flagship, quote unquote, agile certification.
I think it will help.
Okay.
I'm hoping at the end of the day, though, we help the people that are entrusted to follow these processes one way or another to deliver world-class products. But I don't know. All I can tell you is that in all the journeys that I've done in this whole agile space, right? I've done so many agile trainings. At the end of the day, I still just see that nobody knows what the heck they're doing out there. We're all just trying to deliver something and nobody knows how to get it out the door.
And I think, and that's because the onus isn't on Scrum as a process, or it isn't on Scrum as a process. It isn't on Safe as a process. It isn't on Kanban. It's on the workers. It's on the people. That's where the ultimate responsibility lies. Always. Doesn't matter if they're using Scrum. It doesn't matter if they're using Safe. It doesn't matter if they're using Atlassian. It doesn't matter if they're using ADO. The ultimate responsibility falls on the people.
And we hire crappy people.
We hire people. And our people Imperfect? Absolutely. Do people make mistakes? Absolutely. Is there miscommunication if you have more people? Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah, the problem just
So,
gets.
I mean, you know, you work with what you have, and you do the best that you can do.
Maybe that's what we see out of all this is a finally a process on how to deal with people.
Maybe, but dealing with people has always been the key thing. It's always been the hardest thing.
Ain't that the truth? Don't even get me started on offshore resources. That's the whole another episode.
Yeah.
I would say Agile died or Agile is dying because people don't have enough skin in the game. They just don't care enough.
And what if you gave them that skin in the game?
Then you end up with companies like Facebook and Google that are churning out new products seconds after seconds.
Hmm.
Right? Isn't that the whole Netflix model? You pay your employees so damn much that they come to work to do great things.
Pay
And
is
then
only one of the things.
yeah, but Netflix has this whole like chaos engineering concept as well, right? You fix project or your products. You fix your bugs in production at Netflix, right?
You do, right? But that's with the the Simian army and things like that. That was helpful to solve one of their technical limitations. And help ensure a great product, their service.
Yeah, but you can't imagine that Netflix is able to achieve these things because they are doing sprints.
So, maybe they're not doing sprints. Maybe some people are doing sprints. Maybe some people are looking at the flow based model and seeing if they can deliver in short cycle time.
Well, again, that's kind of the back to the argument that I'm making. Like, I would love it if these companies like your Netflix and Googles and Facebooks and these companies that are at the pioneering or trailblazing side of software development, if they published not just their tech stack but their people stack. How in the world did they organize their influence, like their circle of influence, to get these products out the door? Because I know they
Well,
hire TPMs. Is a technical program manager the answer to all this?
I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a lot of things, and they don't publish everything, but they do give insight into um, a lot of some of their problem areas and how they solved it. You just talked about the Simian army, which brought in chaos engineering. Google founded site reliability engineering, right? And so it's they don't have to spill everything, but what they do spill has really really made is now part of standard practices at a whole lot of other companies.
Yeah, but and I'm surprised you didn't bring this up more, right? But how much is like a good CI/CD process outweigh your agile process? You got to imagine like when I'm coaching teams, right? We're like, hey, agile says when you get to the end of the sprint to potentially ship up a product, but you got people like Netflix shipping 50 times a day, Atlassian shipping 50 times a day. You ain't waiting to the end of the sprint to ship your code to production.
Yeah, you're talking about it as if it's one or the other. I actually look at it as both.
But how? How do you do both?
So you're kind of so what I've kind of seen is sometimes you look at and I this is where I kind of highlight um Scrum, the faults I see in Scrum. All right. And And Scrum is an example of an implementation. An implementation is made by people. Are people perfect? Heck no, right? So is Scrum perfect? By God, by all means, no, right? Scrum says to you, here's what you do at the beginning of the sprint. Here are the ceremonies that you have. You plan for the sprint, and in the planning for the sprint, you set up goals, and you can then align yourselves with that goal. You every day you do a little more planning, right? With a daily scrum, right? At the end of the sprint, you have a review, right, where you show what you have developed, and you have a retrospective where you can talk about what went well and what didn't go well in that development process. In that messy middle, here's what they say in that messy middle, as far as execution goes.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Goose egg. But
Right?
that's where you make or break a team or a company.
And I think it's up to the team to kind of figure out what that messy middle is. And if I were
But
a
that's
facilitator of that team, it'd be like, what might work is automating as much as possible, so that when you commit something, it can get automatically tested and built, and we see if the build doesn't break. And if the build doesn't break, then maybe we can see about deploying it to a test environment. And if that works well, then maybe we can see about deploying it to the production environment. That's part of the messy middle that Scrum never prescribes, because I don't think I don't think it should, and B, it really is the responsibility of the team
but somebody
to
should
do it as
prescribe.
the team does.
Somebody should prescribe something though, because I've seen too many teams. Um, they hide behind these principles again, right? Because somebody will say like, "Oh shoot, production is down," and they're like, "Well, great, pop it into the next sprint. Go fill out a bug, and we'll prioritize it for next sprint." Right? Like you create this like bureaucratic process that gets in the way of progress when you have too much of an extreme of like, we are pure Scrum or pure Agile.
Then I don't think they're properly doing it, because the goal is at least according, is something that is workable and shippable. And if it's breaking production, it's not workable or shippable.
I think I and this is why I'm excited for this whole. I'm hoping, right? My expectation out of all this now is that we get better guidance. The way PMI puts out great documentation and resources for project management, I'm hoping we finally get some questions answers to how the heck do we Agile?
So if that is what PMI is going to do, I wish them well, and I wish them good luck. I don't think that is
Well, then
it.
why merge then? Why bring these two organizations together?
I think PMI needs to show that they are looking at handling work in general. And whether it is done the traditional way or whether it is done in an iterative agile fashion, right? And so they need to they've been trying to have their both feet in those two different quarters. I think this is just another step toward that. I think it's a big step.
I don't know. I'm less optimistic now about any of this, because if they don't do anything that's going to benefit the greater good, then what the heck are you doing? And with that, we'll close it up
We're
here.
just, I mean, you know,
We're
or,
just two guys thinking about this, guys, and I'm sure you're all thinking some stuff too.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, you got to deliver results, and I just wish there was more examples on how do you do that. And because of the lack of that documentation, the lack of that experience, the lack of those examples, our agile practices fade because companies, executives, directors, VPs, C-suites, they just don't see that ROI. And I
Yeah.
do believe there is an ROI. I am a firm believer in agile, and I do believe that an iterative process is the right way to think about any problem. But it's hard to turn dollar signs into that.
And I think one other counterpoint to, why don't we see kind of this process, how it's done at Meta or Google or
And the like.
Netflix is, and something that works at Netflix isn't going to work at Google. Something that works at Google isn't going to work at Meta. Something that works for one company may not work for another. So spilling how the sausage gets made at one company doesn't guarantee that success at another company.
Yeah. So, but that goes in, that clearly highlights the point that I made earlier that these companies just have said, given Agile the big middle finger and said, screw it, we don't need this crap. We have our own way of doing work.
They have their own way of doing work that started out probably textbook Scrum or textbook Safe or XP or their own way of kind of defining how to do something iterative and and if that organization owns it and nurtures it and works it that's where they get that success. Is it agile at that point? Who cares? It's successful for them.
Right. I love that. Who cares? Is it Agile? Who cares? Except if your title is Agile Coach, then you're screwed.
Well, do what Mark Ruth does. He doesn't call himself an agile coach. He calls himself a modern work coach. And I think that's what things are
Don't even
things are
get started
shaping
with
to
that
these
one because
days. It's not the adjective that you really want before the word coach. It's going to be something else. I mean, how many people out there on LinkedIn have titles of waterfall coach?
it still exists.
It's ridiculous. Come on.
This is a tough conversation because I don't see. I'm gonna go back to my skin in the game, trust, accountability, offshore resources. When these companies have these budgets, I think the first mistake that they make is that they don't hire in source, right? Like I think any company that outsources their talent, doesn't matter what concept or principle or framework you're using, you're already dead on arrival. I have not seen a successful implementation of non-in-sourced folks succeeding.
Okay.
Going back to your Meta, Netflix, Google, Amazon, how many employees are not co-located in the same building? And it's, I don't even want to turn this into a whole RTO discussion either. But the successful ones have figured something out, and it's not outsourced talent. Because you gotta have skin in the game. You gotta want this. You gotta like wake up in the morning and go, crap, if I don't do my part of the puzzle, then the whole thing collapses. But when you have contractors or offshore resources, potato, you succeed, you don't succeed, I'm just on to the next one tomorrow anyways. Right? There's no ownership there.
And I would, as a counter argument, offer up that these things are, you know, a lot of these companies that you're talking about the Metas and the Googles and the Netflix, but they're not in one single geographical area. These are truly global companies. A lot of these companies are global companies. And so it's not outsource, it's they're picking talent from wherever in the world.
Yeah,
And
no,
don't forget, we are
that's why I
we
was
are we are
specific. I said insourcing.
advocates of
I
a
said
company that does exactly the same thing.
no, but I said insourcing, right? I think it's critical for you to insource your talent. I don't care where they're located physically. Your talent needs to be a part of your company.
Okay.
Because I think when you don't have your talent in your company, like I'll give you a great example. I was working with the team, we are coaching them through this whole agile process. We got them all set up, right? Everything was like Jira, chef's kiss, right? Everything was great. And then I'm ready to roll this out and we're ready to kick off the project. And they hired a third party company to do the software development portion of this project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're like, great. So we bring them on last minute because they were negotiating the vendor that was going to be, or the supplier that was going to do the code, the development. And they got him in at the 11th hour. And the company's like, oh yeah, we don't do any of those workflows. We don't even use Jira. We're just going to do our own thing and just give you the deliverable. The last 6 months have been a waste.
Well, but on that, who's is it a fault of? It's the fault of the company for putting these people in at the last minute and not giving clearly enough time, right? Because the great the great maxim about group dynamics, right? The Tuckman model, right? Forming, storming, norming, performing.
Oh yeah,
Right,
I'm familiar with that.
right.
I've cried myself through
And
that one before.
you put them in the last hour. You're back at that forming state, no doubt about it.
Right.
So it's yeah. Of course you're not gonna be saving any sort of money.
Yeah. And then I don't even want to get into the conversation of like, should your agile or like your scrum master, your product owner, should they be technical if you're building a technical product? Because my belief is that they better know how to read code.
So I know how to read code. I know how to read C code. I know how to read assembler code, right? I know how to do all these technologies because I was a coder in a different industry. Now, jump forward 20, 30 plus years, and where people are talking about JavaScript and Node and
And the like.
I can read the line of code. I can kind of get what that means. Does that make me a bad facilitator?
No, because you appreciate the trials and tribulations that coder will go through when you tell him, estimate the story for me.
Why did you call this 5 story points instead when
Not
everybody says
necessarily why did you call it, but you have a better appreciation for the struggles that developer goes through, right? Dealing with a bug that you just can't reproduce no matter how hard you try, and you got a PM asking you, I need a done date for this, and you're like, lady, please, I don't even know what the problem is. Like that empathy you don't get if you've never been in those trenches. It's very easy when you've been a project manager for a company that builds a building where everything is known, going back to our earlier conversation, versus writing anything with software, because software has its mind of its own. And it really truly is a magical experience because you have no idea. It's like half the time, like that. I love that meme of like, I don't know why it works on my machine, but it does. I don't know why it doesn't work on my machine, but it does. Like, have you ever written code that you're like, why is this working?
Oh, all the time.
Right. And again, you could be an empathetic scrum master in that light, because when you're with your developers and you guys are trying to figure out what makes it into the sprint, what doesn't make it into the sprint, why something's going to take extra longer or not, you can have those empathetic discussions and debates versus a traditional project manager coming in from PMI that only knows known knowns and known unknowns, right? They're going to come in and go, I need a date. I don't care if you got to move Mount Everest. I need a date. And there's no empathy there. And that's right there where you start creating these frictions that now break your agile process because they're like not on your team. They're just there to manage a date and a schedule and a budget, which agile doesn't even talk about schedules or budgets. And every company in the world runs around schedules and budgets.
Right.
That's another big, huge disconnect of this whole why this whole agile things are not dead but a lie conundrum.
Right, because this is why I kind of look at this as two things, where when we talk about projects, we're talking about something with a beginning, a middle, and an end, hence a schedule. When we're talking about something where we're developing a product, how long is that product going to be around, and how long are we going to refine it? It's essentially forever. Right.
Which is why my favorite response to anybody anytime, it sounds very condescending, but I have the shrug ASCII on like copy paste. Because the moment somebody asks me a question, I'm like, I don't know. It could be a day, could be a month, could be a year, could be 10 seconds, it could be anything. But it takes a team that cares to lock themselves in a room, look at the problem, define the problem, strategize the solution, build the solution, execute the solution, test the solution, and deliver the solution. Because they care, because they want to be there, because they own it. And you can't do that when your team doesn't care. And no framework's going to fix that problem.
Right. Doesn't matter if it's traditional, Scrum, Kanban,
So when we want to become billionaires, let's go figure out that problem. How do we get people to care about their job?
Well, go back to the days of where lifetime employment was lifetime employment, and
that's the crux of the whole thing, right? So is that then? So we're back to the Meta, Facebook, Netflix thing, right? Is the simple fact that they give you 4-year retainer stock, right? Because your stock for 1 year vests over 4 years on a cliff. Is that the model that is that those golden handcuffs that makes you perform so well?
So
because when you had a pension,
so 4-year stock options is one thing. A pension is an entirely different beast.
Right, unless you're working at NVIDIA. But the pension used to mean you give your life to this company, and in return, we will take care of you when you need it the most.
Yes.
And that went away in what, 2005-ish timeframe around there?
It's been away long before 2005.
Boeing surprisingly kept it into 2009. When I became an employee in 2010, they got rid of it that year.
So Boeing. So by the time you were there at Boeing and was seeing that pension there, pensions had been gone from other companies
long
decades before.
Really? Wow.
Decades before.
So this is again. So how do we fix this problem? But Netflix and Facebook and Google, none of them have pensions. So why do
the
they
only
do
place that has pensions are government institutions?
But why do they? But why do they do? Let's talk about non-extraordinary work as a government institution. But why do these tech companies do extraordinary work? Why is it that Tesla, even though Elon is like rage monster all 24/7, is pushing out the pushing the envelope on what car and software development is? What is it about them? Because I guarantee you that the word agile does not exist in Elon Musk's vocabulary.
Yeah, it doesn't.
He does not have that.
It doesn't, but it does in who Elon hired.
I don't think so.
Who runs Tesla day to day. So
I don't think so.
I think very much so.
I don't think so.
And everybody looks at, so even though Elon may not know the definition of agile, you do have to look at his other company, SpaceX, to see a true example of hardware development done in
Right.
an iterative fashion.
But I wouldn't even like. I've seen the blog posts from a SpaceX software engineers, and they don't necessarily prescribe to this whole agile thing either. I get that
I'm
it's
not
iterative, but I don't
following.
think that they drive. I don't think that they build like buy 100% into that Kool-Aid.
Okay. I think we kind of have to do, we have to sit you on a couch and we have to see what you mean when you I'm going to start bringing out the Rorschach's cards. It's like, and what do you see here? I see a Kanban board. That's very interesting, Mr. Ortiz. And let's play some word association, Scrum, Agile. So what sort of connotations do you have there when somebody
I
says
was
the word agile?
I'm telling you what I've read. I'm telling you what I've read through like blog posts from SpaceX engineers.
Okay.
I'm just trying to find like the purpose. What drives them? Why does SpaceX then, given the fact that you have a dictator, like perform well? Like I mean, we all saw Boeing send astronauts to space, and my homeboy Elon's got to go pick him up. Why? Because Boeing, there's no company out there that's doing agile better than Boeing. I was there for 6-7 years.
Yeah.
We rolled out of agile up the wahoo. Everybody was agiling.
So you're kind of describing the Nokia problem.
Build a brick, build an indestructible phone, build a great product.
No, actually, so what they were doing was, they were dominant in the personal cell phone business, right? They had models and they were using agile development and they were doing all of these things. And now nobody owns a Nokia phone because Apple comes along, right? So, being agile doesn't necessarily guarantee your company's going to be successful. There,
Mark it.
said it.
So we're back to square one though. What is agile then? Like, why do we care so much about this term and this merger then? Because clearly it means something to us, and it means something to a lot of companies out there. Yet it means nothing to everyone.
Well, I don't know if it means something to a lot of companies out there.
It does, because
the ink is hardly dried on this.
But look at the millions and millions and millions of dollars in training budgets and digital transformation projects that over the last decade have occurred.
Right. And right now, I need to remind you, how many certifications does Agile Alliance have?
0. Because they did conferences. But now I need to remind you how many certifications the PMI Institute has.
PMP, there's like,
PMP,
that's all we do.
But PMP is the document, like that is, it's the holy grail of certifications when in this space.
Of the traditional space. And thus you're kind of getting into why PMI was so interested in Agile Alliance. Their name is PMI and the PMP are too entrenched in the traditional realm.
Well, you're saying that they want
to get into the other realms. They've been trying to
you get in bed with the enemy.
Their way with the distributed agile and with the PMI ACP, and this is yet another step.
Nefarious. All right, Bob.
I don't know about nefarious. I mean,
you're getting in bed.
There's no heroes or villains here.
No, you're getting in bed with the enemy to extend your reach and influence. Smart.
That's what Apple did with Microsoft once
I know.
upon a time.
It's how you get ahead. But anyways, this was a great conversation, Bob. We've been at this for an hour, and I'm sure we can go for another 10.
Let's make a 24-hour live stream of this.
I think it's a critical conversation. I know Ronnie didn't want to participate because he's like, hey, I'm the sysadmin, I'm just the Jira admin. But everything we do as Jira admins fundamentally is influenced by how the people use the tool and why they use the tool and why Jira is the leading competitor. I guarantee you, Jira is not the leading tool because it's pretty. Right? It's the leading tool because it augments the philosophy and ideals that people have when it comes to how do we deliver a product. And it does it better than other tools.
Well, it hopefully delivers the ideals, but more often than not, it delivers the what is. And hopefully with people understanding the what is and figuring out the what we want to be and having a sympathetic Jira admin that will make those changes, then the company thrives and improves.
Yep.
And that's and hopefully becomes a Google, a Netflix, a Meta, some company that Alex Ortiz mentions every 5 minutes.
I'm sorry. I'm very well connected in my tech space. OpenAI. All right. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure we're going to chop this up into very many segments. And we'll see you all on a Thursday episode of the JLife, 2 p.m.
Yep. See you on the
5
JLife.
p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and drop a like.
Do the like, do the subscribe, do all those YouTube-y things.
Yep. Help us help you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.